Welcome to the Indiana 4-H Clover Call podcast, where our goal is to share information about the people and programs that make the Indiana 4-H Youth Development Program such an important part of our communities. We welcome youth and adult 4-H volunteers, 4-H youth and their families, extension professionals, and any others who are interested in providing positive opportunities for youth. We thank you for joining us for this episode, which begins now.
Welcome to Clover Call, where our topic is 4-H alumni experiences. I'm Dena Held, Martin County Extension Educator and County Extension Director. Blessed to be on the Martin County 4-H Fairgrounds today between Lagodi and Shoals. And I have a guest here with me today and very honored to be your host of Clover Call, and welcome Dan Gregory to Clover Call.
Well, thank you, Dena. It's good to get together and kind of reminisce a little bit and explain, my views of the value and of 4-H.
Fantastic. We appreciate you taking time today to come out to the fairgrounds and join Clover Call. So Clover Call today wants to focus on 4-H alumni experiences. We know a lot about how 4-Hers do what they do through 4-H, and that 4-H brings about wonderful life skills for development for youth. Today we want to focus on the alumni experience, which I think that will back up to, of course, actual 4-H members, how your family's been involved and your experiences. We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I go back to the 60s, and I was in 4-H as a member early on. My father was a 4-H leader. My brothers were in 4-H, and it was very, to me at the time, it was just a huge opportunity to grow. I think kids, particularly looking for something, can find those wherever they are, but 4-H to me was just a natural. So that's kind of how it started. I've been a big fan of land-grant university idea, extension in general, and the how and the why that 4-H came about has always fascinated me. When land-grant universities were doing so much research but having issues getting it out to the people who needed it. And extension was created, and shortly after 4-H, and it's been there ever since, doing the same thing, just whole different generations.
Fantastic. So what are some of your favorite 4-H activities or projects?
Well, I was raised on a farm, and we had Angus beef cattle, so that was the natural thing for us to bring into 4-H, but also did some of the poster projects, but always reverted back to the livestock entities as my favorite.
Fantastic. So now you have younger generations that are involved in 4-H?
Yes, my children are now adults, obviously, and got those into 4-H. All three of those were 10-year members, kind of following in the same footsteps of farm life and what we had to bring to a fair and learn from. So we did the swine, we did the beef, we did sheep briefly. It was just the highlight of the summer for me, and then my children as well, was to come to a fair. And we started getting into the state fair at the same time and continue that with my grandchildren.
Fantastic. How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 7 grandchildren, and this year 5 of them were in 4-H, the other 2 are still too young. So it's becoming just a continuation, I think, of what started back in the 60s with me, and then my children in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And here we are, 2021, with 5. And some of them show in Tippecanoe County, and some of them show right here in Martin County.
Fantastic. So the highlight of the summer as the fairs, the county fairs and the Indiana State Fair. What kind of, when you go to those fairs and maybe take a step back as an alumni, what kind of things do you think of?
Well, fairs are different. We go to the ones in Tippecanoe County and the ones here in Martin County, and we usually dabble in a few other counties around us as well, Davies and DuBois. And every installation is a little different, and the people are a little different, but the core, the similarities are pretty obvious. That it's adults and youth doing something they love to do together, which is not that common. And that's what I really like to see is the moms and the dads, discussing and coaching and judging their kids and their grandchildren and helping them just kind of see the big picture. I'm not really that hung up on grand champion stuff. It's great when it happens, but I think when you have enough experience, you'll see there's a lot more to it than a win.
Right. And that's one of our research shows us that nearly 4 times more likely are youth who are involved in 4-H that they go on to make contributions to their communities. 4 times. What do you think about that research statement?
The research is interesting, and I don't know where that statistic comes from, but it kind of plays out in my family. I was elected to a county commissioner's role here in Martin County, and ironically enough, I sat down to another 4-H alumni at the same time, and he said, "Dan, what do you think about starting our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance?" And I kind of was taken aback a little bit. I said, "You mean you haven't been?" So he said, "No, we never did, but I thought now that you're here, we should." So that was kind of a thing that kind of struck me as important from 4-H perspective, is teaching that, getting involved in the community in other ways, whether 4-H got you there or some other way got you there. It's just important to give back.
It is, and I value seeing that through our 4-Hers and our alumni. So that goes on to the next stat that I have here about youth are about 2 times more likely to be civically active, and you automatically went to that.
Yeah, and not just the political angle. That's certainly one way to do it, but there's all kinds of other things that 4-H can teach you as far as the organization skills, Robert's Rules of Order, conducting meetings, the pledge of flag, that kind of stuff just kind of builds and builds, I think, when you go through life. Maybe means more important to you later than it did earlier, but I think that's kind of a natural. If you get involved in enough things, you want to get involved in even more things. So, 4-H was my starter.
That's fantastic. It makes me think about earlier this year, we hosted with a lot of collaboration, but you were one of the drivers of the American flag retirement ceremony here locally. The flag retirement ceremony was very, very moving, very instrumental, a community need, all those things. And it just makes me think about your 4-H alumni experience and the connections that you were able to have to pull different collaborators together and teammates to do that ceremony, that learning opportunity. That was a very good thing. Would you share with our listeners today about that American flag retirement ceremony?
It's one of the odd things that I hadn't really thought about. My parents and our family flies the flag daily, and we never really thought about when they get wore out, what happens to them. So we ended up having a collection of old flags, and I was talking to a gentleman that's involved at the VFW about that, and he said, "Well, it just so happens, that there's a process for that." So doing a deeper dive into that, came up with the idea of doing a proper flag destruction ceremony, retirement ceremony. So it was kind of probably an outgrowth of everything that makes you think about, our country, what it means, the veterans, the flag, all that stuff rolled into one. I thought it was pretty valuable experience for me personally, but also I think for the community to kind of have a level of awareness of what all that could be and what should be done.
Fantastic. We appreciate your drive, and like you said, 4-H was one of the starter pieces for you, and throughout the community we see that in the connections. What kind of, as a 4-H alumni, what kind of different connections do you think you might have because of being connected to 4-H?
That's a great question, and I can tell you probably fully 25 or 30% of my connections can be related back to 4-H. The rest of them kind of came in other entities that I was involved in. So, it kind of, as you said, it was a starter for me. I've always thought it was easier to say no to things, but if you take it and turn it around and say, why don't you just say yes to things? You can always back out or change your mind later. But those have opened so many doors for me and for others that it's just a mindset to say yes to something instead of no.
Confidence. I hear confidence in that, at least a mindset of saying yes at the beginning.
I'm a pretty common sense person, and sometimes that gets a little lost in today's society where, you don't have to make everything complicated, and just kind of stay true to your beliefs and your heart, and just do the things that you feel are right. Again, saying yes to things that may or may not stick for a long time. Most things I've been in, I usually stick around several years, maybe to the detriment or maybe to the improvement of it. But I think at one time I was involved with both the fire departments, the community foundation. There's a pretty long list, and every one of them I learned something. I stayed with it as long as I thought I should, and then I moved on to other things.
You keep coming back to 4-H, and you're one of my go-to calls locally, and I value that in you, and like just asking you to help with Clover Call. What other kind of experiences, insights would you want to share?
Well, that's a good question, but the answer is I think people in life just take steps, and you start out as a young person, taking whatever steps school may bring you, or I readily understand 4-H isn't the end all and do all of anything, but it certainly was a step for me and people I know, and I think it leads to other things. It could be sports at school, careers, whatever. 4-H has been, it's a piece. It's another piece, and I guess if I had a wish list for Martin County and other counties in Indiana and beyond, it'd be to take a good look at it, parents and people, and just look at the value of it long term, not just 1 year, but the long term value of learning those things that can be learned through 4-H.
Fantastic. So today, 4-H offers so many projects, so many activities, so many ways to connect through heart, hands, head, and health, all of those things. And one of the nation's largest youth serving organizations. So as a piece of that, what if you were talking to a grandparent who doesn't have any involvement or knowledge about 4-H? What would you say to that person?
I would probably kind of relate some of the things my family's experienced, the different generations of us, and what kind of value we placed on it at the time, as well as what kind of value it brought later, and just ask if there's anything similar that they can think of for their children or grandchildren to get involved in. It's evolved so much from the early days when it was really agricultural oriented a lot, and there was a lot of small farms. Everybody had kind of a diversified farm, so it was easy to do that. With the consolidation of farms, it's not quite as easy or as obvious as it used to be. So I think my advice to them would be to just take a look. Say yes to something. If it don't work, it don't work. If it does, it does.
It's about that experience, maybe. And thinking of experiences, would you say, you mentioned about the competition, and if a grand champion comes along or a champion, that's great. Can you talk to me about your view as a 4-H alumni about those times where you see kids not have the successes that maybe they had wished for?
My family, we've been at the top and we've been at the bottom probably more often than the top. But the lesson kind of stays the same. My granddaughters this year was at State Fair, three girls, all and beautiful, by the way, and very nice. But they were showing cattle in the Coliseum, and they were 5th out of 6th and 6th out of 7th and 7th out of 7, and they were tickled to death to be in the environment. I think the the lessons learned weren't so much where you placed, it was how you placed and how you got to where you placed. And to learn, the motto being make the best better makes a lot of sense when you say, it's okay to start out lower. It's even better if you learn why and how to improve on that. And you can say that about anything in life. You don't have to win, if that makes sense.
It does. You don't have to win to win. That is incredible, and really does parallel to make the best better. So as we think about 4-H activities, 4-H projects, 4-H involvement, maybe it's just becoming a better version of yourself. A 4-H member becoming a better version, having different variety of experiences.
I think that's a good point. You probably point to a few instances where I would say that happened in our family. My son was very much involved with the Beef Project, as all of them have been. He went to the state fair about the third time he went, and I think he was 14th out of 14. And really, I don't know that really made him mad. It didn't. He knew why he was 14th out of 14. The next year, he had bought a better species or better genetics of cattle, and went back. And I mean, he worked hard for probably 10 or 11 months on one animal, and it was kind of like obsessive to me. By the same token, I've seen how disappointed he was the year before, in that he had learned so much from it. He was second in the state the next year. The year before, he'd been dead last. So, what's that say about learning and in the ring, about competition? You need competition, or it kind of falls apart. But understanding that being last can be a learning experience.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we are embracing, have embraced for a while, but specifically outreaching to individuals who don't know a lot about 4-H, an opportunity for all theming, so opportunity for all, where we want to make sure every individual knows about 4-H, and then they can choose what they do, or if they want to be involved, or how they want to be involved. But we do believe in it, and I know you do, the power that 4-H has. What do you think about the opportunity for all?
Well, it's there's so much opportunities for different things for people to get involved in, especially young people. 4-H is one of them for sure, obviously. But you do have to recognize the demographics changing in the country, and especially maybe locally, to where we had a school in one of our towns that simply closed and sold it, simply because there weren't enough children to fill it. They didn't need the space anymore. So when you look at that kind of demographic, you go, what's happening? And some of it's migration, some of it's just simply, the baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. We didn't have as many children maybe as our parents did. So you could see this coming a long time ago in respect to Social Security and the bigger picture of America, having that influence on programs like 4-H, where the pool just isn't as big as it used to be to draw from. So if you get hung up on enrollment numbers, you got to recognize there's not as many people to enroll, and that's I think it could definitely grow, and probably will. COVID was definitely a problem across the country in terms of time and exposure and effort to have a traditional year. Hopefully we can get back to that a little more soon and have some better numbers. I think that's always the goal. We're Americans, we like more. That's kind of built into our DNA, I think, to want more. And sometimes it can happen, sometimes there's a reason why it can't.
Oh, fantastic perspective. I'm sitting here in the room that we're at here at the Purdue Extension office in Martin County. We still have a number of Indiana State Fair projects that need to be picked up. Just kind of glancing down through there, I see, the model cars, the posters, the salon photography prints, the cake decorating, electrical projects, this construction toy, robot project, a lot of different projects here. And what would you say about these projects that are still here as far as the variety?
It's quite a variety. Just what a little bit we can look at here kind of gives you an idea, though, the idea that there's something for everyone. Whether it's a model car or cake decorating, some of those projects existed when I was in 4-H, some of them did not. When you go to the state fair, obviously you got the big flashy projects like a Grand Champion steer and all that stuff, but every one of these projects represents a learning experience for somebody. And I think it's great. I always have thought it's great. And the idea that 4-H is still viable is important for people to know.
Viable and available.
Well, I think the word I would use, sustainable. It's been sustained now in Martin County since the late 40s, and it's still here. It's growing, and then it's shrunk some for all the right reasons. Nothing wrong with the program. Simple demographics changed it. But when you look at the value of time put into it, it pays off. Yeah, the variety of projects has been amazing. It seems like it expands some every year. Something new comes up that is kind of the hot topic of the day. But then you got the old school stuff that's still there too. So it's something for everybody.
It gives that variety. So for closing words for 4-H alumni experiences, what else would you like to share?
Just keep in mind the thought, to say yes to it. Give it a try. Bring your children, your grandchildren, whatever, who's listening to this. Give them some exposure to it and let them make the decision. Don't make the decision for them necessarily. Just make sure they got exposure to it. It's been a valuable part of my life, a valuable part of my family's life. Going on and on, I can see my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, one of these days being involved in it as well. It's a great experience. Great value to the community and the people, so just say yes.
That's a great perspective. It certainly does my heart and mind so good, so happy. It brings a smile to my face to hear about that perspective.
Well, thank you, Dena.
You're welcome, Dan. Today on Clover Call has been Dena Held from Purdue Extension in Martin County and Mr. Dan Gregory. Thanks so much for listening.
Interested in learning more about Indiana 4-H? We invite you to visit our website, extension.purdue.edu/4H, or contact your local Purdue Extension office and ask for the 4-H Youth Development Extension Educator. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss an episode. We look forward to joining you again on the next Indiana 4-H Clover Call.